it's that awkward pause before you know when it's starting to actually record. Like they still haven't figured that piece out yet. So, hello everybody, and welcome to this month's episode of Blueprints for Business, sponsored by Fordly. Jane, thank you so much for all of the support that you guys have provided throughout this entire year. We've got an amazing host on this week, Blake Oliver, who's going to tell us all about the changes and evolution of CPE and the things he's been doing with Earmark. But before I jump over there, I want to jump back over to you, Jane. Say, Fordly's had an amazing year. Do you mind telling us, what's new in the world of Fordly, and what would you like to share with everybody real quick?
Yeah. We've just had a really busy last couple of months. Obviously, lots of big changes happening on the payments side and in the payments market. And yeah, lots of growth. One of the biggest things I'll say is we just released our new auto payments module. So if you're looking to automate payments from your clients moving forward, we just released something that's so smooth. It's like butter. It's just very, very streamlined. And so far the people who have been trying it are very happy with it. So just what I like to see before Christmas. I do consider it having been a Christmas present from our development team to me.
Yeah.
And then to all of you. So
makes your life a lot easier for sure, right?
Yeah. But otherwise, just excited for the holidays as well. I don't know about you all, but I'm taking some PTO next week. So yay.
It's one thing I've always been a firm believer of is, at least for my company, from New Year's Eve through the day after, from Christmas Eve to the day after New Year's, this is about to be a really short time. That period of time, I officially closed down the business online-wise. We still take certain phone calls here and there, but it's to just give that space of time to get things handled before year end and such. So
other than payrolls, I'm done as of tomorrow till the 6th.
Nice.
Beautiful. Well, so this month we brought Blake Oliver on. Blake, it's been a pleasure knowing you for so many years now, and I'm excited to engage in this conversation about CPE credits. And I'd love to know from people here, either in the chat as you're watching, as normal, as you see me looking up, it's because I'm trying to manage social media, bring in comments back into the conversation. Who here is tracking their CPE and needs CPE credits? Everybody should be tracking them, but okay. So, Blake, would you, most people probably know you, but do us the favor and introduce yourself, my friend.
Thanks, Matthew. And great to see you all. Some new faces, some I've known for years. Hey, Liz. Hey, Linda.
Hi.
Hey, Jane. I'm a CPA. I owned a small firm. I kind of took a different path than a lot of people, where I just started off in accounting, working as a bookkeeper, and built a firm from there. I never worked at a larger firm to start, like a lot of people do. And I'm a career changer too. So it was a bit of a backwards path into accounting. And after I sold my firm after about 5 years, we were really early adopters of cloud tech, and we did very well working with Xero as one of the first Xero-only bookkeeping, outsourced accounting virtual firms. And after I sold that firm, I started the accounting podcast, which was called the Cloud Accounting Podcast at the time. And that was with David Leary, who had like an 18-year career at Intuit. And the idea was, he's from the Intuit side, I'm from the Xero side. We'll talk about technology and maybe argue about it every week. And that turned into a wonderful partnership that's gone on now for 7 years. We've been doing that show.
7 years already, dude?
And we haven't missed a week. So every week for 7 years. And if you haven't heard the accounting podcast, please subscribe on all your devices. It's a weekly roundup of news and analysis in the accounting profession. Started out with a tech focus, and we still talk about tech, but now it's far beyond that. Now it's the 150-hour rule and what's going on with Macy's and their financial statement misstatements and all that sort of thing. It's a lot of fun, and it has turned into the #1 podcast in the accounting profession by downloads. So that has been amazing. Well, what does that have to do with CPE? Well, a few years in, some of our listeners who have a CPE requirement started jokingly saying to me at conferences, they'd come up to me and they'd say, "Hey, Blake, I should be earning CPE for this. I get so much out of it every week." And that stuck in my head. And I kept coming back to that idea over and over again. And when I had a bit of a break in my career, I thought, I'm going to try to figure out how to make this happen. So I went to NASBA's website and I downloaded the 66-page document of CPE standards. And
Massive.
like a good little CPA, I read through every word and I figured out, hey, there's a way we can do this for podcasts, and we could do this with an app. And so I designed and hired a guy on Upwork to build the first version of the Earmark app. It was me and Ali in Pakistan, and we built it together. That's earmark.app now. You can listen to a podcast and you can get NASBA self-study CPE for listening. You take a quiz instead of doing attendance checks, and it's all through their self-study format. It works for CPAs. It works for CMAs if you're a certified management accountant. And it also works for enrolled agents. We are registered with the IRS. So if you need your IRS CE, the federal tax courses and ethics courses that we have also qualify. So we've been doing that now for like 3 years, and it's growing like crazy. So if you have a CPE requirement year end, you can get it all with Earmark. And I should add, the one thing that makes us kind of different than a lot of the other CP providers is that you can use it for free. So you can earn 1 credit for free every week without paying a cent to us. And that is all part of the mission of making CPE affordable, accessible, easy. I feel like I'm not the kind of person that learns well sitting in a conference room for 8 hours a day. So I wanted to make something that works for me, and hopefully that like allows people to earn continuing education credits while actually learning, while doing it in a way where you've got this downtime when you're driving to work and you can learn 30 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So it's not just about like finding something that fits into your schedule. It's not about, just sitting in a conference room and doing emails while you don't really listen to the instructor. You can choose from our library of 2,000 courses and actually learn something from these entertaining educational podcasts. We've got webinars now too on demand. And yeah, it's going well. People like it.
So I can tell you, I just recently downloaded the same NASBA 66-page thing and started going through and trying to understand what it would take to be able to offer these CPE credits. And I can tell you all, it doesn't make for great reading, and you should really just trust into using Earmark, of course. Blake, I wanted to ask you, because you've been very vocal about this, about the 150-hour rule when it comes to credits for CPAs. Do you mind explaining a little bit more of that for us? Because we have a broad audience that sometimes it's bookkeepers, they may not need it. Some may be looking to, upgrade their career, and this would impact them as well.
So basically the rule is, and this is not new, this was really solidified about 20 years ago at this point. But funny enough, most of the CPAs who are licensed today did not actually earn 150 credit hours. They earned 120 under the old regime. But what it is when we say 150, we're talking semester hours of like college credits. And most people, when they do a bachelor's degree, it's 120 semester hours. And so that is what, prior to this rule, you needed to get to be a CPA. You had to take certain courses. You had to have 120 semester hours, or the equivalent of like a college degree. You have to have a bachelor's degree, and then you could sit for the CPA exam. 20, 30 years ago, some folks got it into their head who run the accounting profession that we needed to increase the educational requirement to raise the stature of the profession to, match the requirements for, or more closely match the requirements for law and for medicine. And so there was actually a push to require a master's degree. Well, they didn't get that. And so the 150-hour rule was sort of this like compromise
Okay.
that was created. And really, it just means another 30 semester hours. But you can get those credits from anywhere. You can get them from like a community college. You can get them from a master's degree. It doesn't matter. And it's about equivalent to an extra year of education. And so what we have found over the past 20 years through every study that's been done about this rule is that it just adds to the cost and complexity and time to get your CPA. And it discourages people who don't have the financial means or the time to do it. Like really awful stats, actually, like a 25% decrease in minority CPAs as a result of like this rule. And it doesn't increase quality. There's no evidence that CPAs are any better off, that the profession is any smarter, any more ethical, whatever you want to say, for having it. And so I have been always wondering, I've always questioned this, and we talk a lot about it. We have over the years on our show. And what's amazing is that in the last few years, people in state societies, leaders of state societies, and members of boards of accountancy have started listening to the show. And
Interesting.
And we know from listeners who tell us this, that not on the record, of course, because everybody's, afraid to step on everybody else's toes when it comes to like AICPA and NASBA and the state societies. It's all very polite, but we have actually been driving the discussion, and we have
It's got to
been
feel great, right? You a lot of us, when we get into these things, we may have a passionate call, something we're hoping to invoke change onto. And what I'm hearing is it's been through your actions over this period of time that you're starting to hear that people are listening. You're working within the system to improve it, involve it.
We're bringing other voices into the discussion that have been excluded so far. So a great example is Amber Setter. We had Amber Setter on the show a couple of times to talk about the 150-hour rule in California. And she just so eloquently explained how the talent shortage, the lack of CPAs, is actually hurting the public. And we are failing as a profession to protect the public because we aren't creating enough CPAs. And I think that message really resonates with the boards of accountancy, because that's their job. Their job is to protect the public, not to, protect individual CPAs by like restricting the supply. I don't like that view. It's like, oh, it's better for me if there aren't so many CPAs.
I get to charge more. Right?
Yeah, but that's not how it's worked over the last 20 years. That hasn't helped, right? So, yeah, it's really an honor to like get to help make that happen, make that change happen in our small way. And it's the power of podcasting and the power of the internet and social media is allowing for grassroots change to happen for good in many cases, right? We always hear about sort of the bad side of it, but there's a lot of good that comes out of it. And yeah, it feels good to be a part of that.
It brings up an interesting question I'd love to ask of everybody that's here and also watching abroad. How many people here are either, the titles are always a difficult thing, right? Bookkeeper, accountant. So either a non-licensed enroll agent or non-licensed CPA or an EA or a CPA. Like, I would be interested to know kind of the mix through the different places, who is what.
Don't forget, if you're a bookkeeper and you want to win the Pro Advisor of the Year, you better get your CPEs, because that is a big part of winning. If you have to get them, and if you can get them for free and listen, and your show is really good, Blake. I mean, I don't miss it because I learned so much. Like, I really enjoyed the Macy's thing, and I see that Liz put in there the drunk ethics with Greg Kike. That was an epic episode. That was one of the best ones. Don't you think, Liz?
I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
go
that
back
was a
and
lot of
listen
fun to
that
put
one.
together. NASBA gave us a really hard time for that, actually. I've never told anyone this on the record, but after we did that series, that 4-hour ethics course, somebody complained, of course, and sent an email to all the state boards of accountancy and CPA leaders, like the state societies and NASBA, and we were investigated and audited and like almost shut down because of that. And it's like, this is what NASBA is concerned about, is like that we made an ethics course where they drink and they curse, but they actually teach really good ethics. And I thought that was funny, right? That's why we did it. But they're just so obsessed with appearances and really ignoring their job, which is to protect the public, elevate the profession. And they just worry about these, you know, like surface level things. So luckily we got through that.
You know, Linda and I have had fun off to the side at times. She loves to bring up different ethical situations, like for law firms and such. And she'll be like, okay, so what do you think you should do if it's X, Y, or Z? And after she did those a couple times with me, I was like, you know, this would be something that'd be really great to do, because a lot of our job, I mean, tell me what everybody else thinks, it comes down to the decision making of how you should or shouldn't handle certain things. How, like, is it a qualified business expense, air quotes, or not? Like that kind of stuff. Anybody else run into those kind of challenges in your practice?
We had a lot of fun with that episode because we did it on the Law Lab, and I came up with well, thank you, ChatGPT, or whichever one it picked on my u.com, and it threw out some suggestions. And I just took some from real life that happened to staff, and how did the staff handle it as opposed to the business owner handling it. And I practiced with Matthew so I could kind of like see how it was going to go, how he thought, how I thought, completely different from the questions. It was a fun show, because really, I mean, yeah, ethics are very important, and how you handle yourself is something that I think sometimes can be a skill that you need to learn, especially if you're newer to doing this stuff and you don't know how to handle some of these situations. I can remember not knowing how to handle them 20 something years ago, and and not really knowing what to do. So it was fun. But yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you and David do such a great job because of the partnership that you have. You're both very different on how you approach things. And I think that's what makes the show so good. It could be any topic. I listen to it every time it drops because I follow it. And it's just, my walk to the gym, sometimes I'm like sending him messages like, oh, you got to listen to this, or I heard this. The Macy story just fascinated me because it was like, what did they exactly do? It was such a weird story. I don't know if you want to share anything about it. It was just confusing.
Well, yeah, it was a single employee who was not doing their accruals correctly for 3 years, and no one noticed. There was no internal control in place to prevent this from, this prepaid account from ballooning to over $100 million. And then finally somebody noticed. I guess that might have been their threshold or something. And it comes back to the talent shortage. Because we found out from an anonymous source via like another an actually journalistic news source that it was apparently somebody who like made a mistake and just like covered it up for 3 years, which we've all actually, if you've had employees in your firm, that happens, right? People make mistakes, they don't ask questions, they let it spiral. But it happened at Macy's, in a public company, and they weren't able to catch it. And it's a lesson for everybody, right? Like, do you have proper levels of review in your firm before the books get closed and, before the financials go to the client? A lot of us don't. I didn't when I first started my firm. I didn't know how to do that. Thankfully, now we're seeing all sorts of like apps pop up that do QA, right? We've now got like solutions for this. Macy's might need to buy Keeper or something. I don't know. But or Flowcast or whatever it is to close the books. So
I gotta tell you, Jacob was giving you lots of love. Jacob Schroeder watching on Facebook, popping up the love for what you were saying.
Hey, Jacob.
Which 100% agree to.
Yeah. What was crazy about this story too is we actually had a reporter from the New York Times reach out to us for clarification on the accounting questions. And that's how I ended up, with a quote in there. But like, there's a lot of business reporters who are responsible for covering beats that are specifically accounting or that overlap with it, and they don't have accounting training, and they actually listen. They search for and they find an episode of our show, and they're listening. So we are educating, accountants, but also the general business community. And that is actually kind of mind blowing to me. Like, I have to start thinking of, okay, what do I say? Because I want to represent CPAs well, right? Like we it's CPAs have a lot of influence. We can actually make a difference if we just have like the courage to speak up and to say what we think. And that's what's fun. I get to do that here in my home office with a $200 microphone. Like it's wild.
And yet we're mostly introverts. So here we are as introverts, unless you go to accounting conferences and then everybody has an opinion about something or something to say.
Yeah. But those accounting conferences, it's like I've been doing that now for over a decade, and it is pretty much the same 3,000 people, right?
Yeah, it is.
And that's great.
With
it's a big community. It's
minimal
wonderful.
variance, yeah.
But like the accounting community in the United States is like over 1 million people work in accounting. So I always think to myself, where are those folks? We need to reach them. We need to get them involved in the discussion. That's what's so great about communities like this and shows like this and podcasts is that you can reach all those folks who would never travel to Las Vegas for an accounting conference.
Right.
I agree. So I'd love to ask again from everybody that's here, whether you or not you need CPE, we all should still be continuing our education, evolving our skill sets so we don't get left behind. What do you guys like best? What are your favorite ways of gaining that knowledge? Christy, I'm going to call on you. She's like, what?
I didn't know.
But you knew she didn't mic.
I'm not.
I'm sorry, I missed the question, Matthew. What did you ask?
The question I was asking is so when you're trying to gain new knowledge, where do you go for that? What's your preferred method of learning?
Typically, I always start with a podcast. That's my preferred mode of learning. So not to keep tooting Blake's horn, but Blake, you got some good ones there on Earmark. And I listen to quite a few of them myself. I also try to look for free resources first, so I'm not costing my employer an arm and a leg. And so I'll look to like CPA Academy or, if it's industry specific, some of the free resources that are out there from Big Four. And then from there, if it's just something I need to learn, I'll bite the bullet and just buy a course from a reputable company or agency or organization. I prefer learning by watching and then doing. So I tend not to get a lot of books because I think I'm going to read them and then I never do. But that's just me.
Anybody else? Liz, I know you write a lot of content for all of us. You've been doing that for some time, but so where do you go to learn information as you're helping to write articles and books and such?
Well, I try to go to reputable sources. So, for a while, Intuit had me writing a bunch of stuff about accounting standards. And so I would look to the Big Four and the monographs that they were putting out about those. That was a lot easier than trying to read the actual standards themselves. It's really tempting for people who are just, dabbling in something new to just ask Professor Google for the best resources. And if you do that, then you are likely to get stuff from Investopedia or other places that are not always correct. So I always try to go for something reputable when I need to get the detailed stuff. Then, when I do podcasts for different people, when I interview people, I do a lot of online stalking of them. So I try to listen to podcasts that they're on and get their ideas. I try to find places where they've been interviewed. And of course, I would be remiss in not joining in the fangirl club for Blake and David and saying, that's always a really good resource. We love Blake, all of us. But you know, that's where I try to go.
So besides, congratulations for your fan club there, Blake. Different question for you I wanted to ask. Do we feel nowadays that the big four are really the best place to go for the best ideas? I feel like COVID taught me that there's a lot of intelligent minds that live outside that realm. What do you think, Blake?
Well, I've tried to watch some of those CP webinars, that PwC put on and
Can't hear you,
Deloitte
my
and
friend.
whatnot. Oh, really? No,
There we go.
no.
Yeah, try
Oh,
to
there
get
we go. I have tried to listen to some of those, webinars that they put out, the CPE, and I just find it to be like, I mean, it's very technical. I'm sure it's excellent, but it's like a lot of people just reading bullet points off of slides.
Yeah.
And for me, that doesn't work for my brain. So, yeah, I mean, if that's what you need, if you just need to like learn this new technical accounting standard and that works for you, great. But I think for most of us, I prefer like a more narrative type of approach to learning. Like most people learn better when there's a story attached to it. And I think that's why our show does well, is because we are talking about whatever's in the news, and then we somehow figure out how to turn that into like a lesson, right? The Macy's story is a lesson about internal controls. And here's what you can learn from that. And having that linkage to like a real world current event makes it real.
The Fat Joe episode was one that
BDO
I
and Fat
remember.
Joe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Linda and I were driving back from Reframe, and we were listening to it on the way back, and just his whole story about how he was impacted. Again, so going back to what you're saying, like if you invoke a story around it, it hits home easier. Accounting can be such technical jargon that we need a way to get the message across.
Yeah, exactly. I'll add something to like how I learn in addition to podcasts, which is my favorite. I don't listen to my own podcast anymore because that would be really narcissistic. So maybe I'll listen to like a few minutes just for a little quality control check, because I don't edit it myself anymore. But like I listen to other shows like the All In podcast, right? The most popular tech podcast in the world. I love listening to that one. That's a great example. And I learned so much about the tech world from that show. And but also I find tools like Perplexity to be incredible. It's my new Google. And when I need to learn how to do something, I'm going first to Perplexity or to ChatGPT or any of these AIs that have access to the internet, because you can make them cite their sources now, which reduces and pretty much eliminates. I don't want to say 100%, but it gets you like 99% no hallucination, because it's trained now to go search if you ask it to validate what it's saying. And, a great example is when I was raising money for Earmark earlier this year, I had to learn how safe notes work. These are convertible notes.
Yep.
That are, and SAFE stands for a simple agreement for future equity. And it's a common templatized agreement that Y Combinator, the startup incubator, popularized.
Yep.
And they've got templates on their website, several different versions you can use. And so I said, I'm going to use this. I have to pick one of the templates. I have to learn how it works so I can communicate how it works to the investors who were friends and family and have never done a safe note before, many of them. So how did I do it? Well, first I tried to read their README, their instructions for how this thing works, which was written by a bunch of accountants and lawyers, obviously. And I'm sitting there on a plane trying to figure out how to do this. And I have like 2 hours to learn this because I got to start sending them out. And I can't get through it. I'm back in intermediate advanced accounting, trying to like figure something out from a textbook. So I took the PDF and I loaded it in to, I think I used Claude at this time. And I said, hey, here's and I gave it the template too. And I said, here's the safe note. Here's the instructions about how it works. I want you to be my tutor. I want you to teach me what I need to know about this instrument. so that I can communicate it. And I explained the situation I was in. And I said, let's just go one thing at a time. Walk me through this and ask me questions. And based on my response, tailor your next, lesson.
Yeah.
Within about an hour and several, a dozen back and forth, questions and answers, I understood it. So this to me is like the game changer for education and continuing education is you can basically teach yourself anything now because you have a tutor. And this tutor can take really complex language, accounting, legal, financial jargon, and language that's been, written in a really complex way by professors.
Yep.
And it can break it down in plain English for you. And it give you infinite examples. So if you haven't tried that, I highly recommend it. You could practice it on, you could try it with like something with tax. Like, if you need to understand like a particular form or a particular like deduction, or you've got a client come into you saying that they want to do this that they saw on TikTok and you need to learn all about it and why it doesn't work.
Mhm.
Like basically you can take their email and you can put it into like Perplexity and you can say, hey, here's this question I got from a client. Can we really do this? And you may know the answer already, but you could figure this out and draft a response to your client saying, I'm sorry, but you have been misled by an influencer. You could do that really quickly now.
Jane and I are actually part of a special group. It's a roundtable called Not the Only App Roundtable. And one of our other members is CPA Pilot. And one of the things that I love about their product is, like you were mentioning, it will actually reference back, it will cite its references. So
Yes.
it'll tell you where it's pulling information from, which is, especially if you're dealing with like tax law, you're going to want something of that nature. So it's a great tool.
Yeah. And if people haven't seen it, and we've
Mhm.
got the time, Matthew, like I'd be happy to like do a example in Perplexity. Like we could actually, like, that's the thing is a lot of people haven't tried it yet. Once you try it, you'll be hooked. Like there's nothing better for tax research or accounting research that you can get for $20 a month.
Yeah.
It's incredible. Like
I would be
people's
happy to show that. I want to ask you before we go there, though.
Yeah.
Wanted to ask you because Earmark actually, when it comes to CPE, we have a lot of different people that are on here that some of us are also educators. We're creating content. Your team has actually expanded your service offering to where you're working, with different app companies, such as Forly to try to grab content, be able to offer it. You've talked to other people creating courses and such to where they can host and post their stuff through your platform. And I'd love for you to talk about that real quick,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of us, we have these ideas we love to share with everybody else, but there's so many people that don't know how to do it, and you're taking away that hurdle.
So one of the problems with CPE is that it is very onerous to create a CPE course. Am I not? Can you hear me again?
Yeah,
is it
get your mic a little closer, will
Oh,
probably be
okay.
good.
There we go. I don't know what's going on with my mic today. Sorry about that.
All good.
So here's the guy who's the professional podcaster, doesn't have good sound. What the heck?
Happens to the best of us.
So it's like all these Zoom settings. Anyway, what was the question?
I was talking about the ability now,
Oh,
where you're finding more CPE content to provide to people.
right. So creating CPE courses or adding CPE to your content has been really expensive in the past. There's a lot you have to do to make a CPE course. You have to create the polling questions or the quiz questions. In our case, it's 5 quiz questions for every hour of CPE, and you've got to have 3 review questions, and you've got to have all this metadata, and you've got to lay it out exactly right. You got to create the CPE certificates. So I thought, let's try to reduce that cost to 0. Let's automate the making of the CPE courses with Earmark. So the idea is that someday, I want anyone who has created content to be able to come into Earmark and share it with the world as a CPE course by like putting in a YouTube link to their video, and boom, out comes a CPE course ready for you to review and submit. And the way we are able to do that is I have used AI. I spent quite a long time building out a chain of prompts using Zapier. We just use off-the-shelf tech to do it. And it's like 40 or 50 steps. And it starts with a transcript. So I can take a transcript of a podcast episode, and then out the other side comes a completed CPE course that's been drafted. And this is something that if you did this with people here in this country, in the United States, it might cost you $200 to make a CPE course. And we are paying about $2 to $3 in API calls to OpenAI. And it takes about 15 minutes because we have to space out the prompts so we don't, hit a limit. Think about that.
That's impressive.
So, yeah. So that's how we've been able to grow Earmark. And, we only have like 6 people in the company full time. And we're going to be profitable next year. And it's because we've taken that routine compliance function and we've automated it. Now we still have humans reviewing it. We have CPAs who look at every course and sign off on it and make sure it's okay. But like, I could count the complaints we get about like something being wrong, right? Like an issue we have to fix, like on one hand.
Wow.
So the quality is excellent. And as we get a new AI model, I can just swap in the new one and the quality goes up like an order of magnitude. So that's the idea, is like, we are going to take the cost of making CPE courses down to 0. And that's great for everybody, because what you get is we can invest that time and money into creating higher quality content, getting more content, bringing new voices into the profession. It's not just limited to people who are like hanging out in those state societies or professional educators, right? Anybody could create content, educational content to share with other accountants.
I agree. It seems like differences of generations. Obviously, we're very tech forward nowadays, so we need this new format to be able to gather additional knowledge, I would say. So, interesting.
So for me, it's like the potential of AI is just obvious because like we have built our company around it. And it's just a matter of time. Like it takes technical know-how, right? You got to like be able to hook up all the pipes, and it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. It took a while to figure out how to do that, but it's coming. It's coming in bookkeeping and accounting, and we're going to have virtual AI staff accountants that we can basically hire in our firms that we will communicate with over Slack or Teams, and that will be able to operate inside of our software and do basic tasks. A lot of stuff that firms are outsourcing now. But imagine if, like outsourcing is tough. It's not a magic wand. So imagine if you get the benefits of offshoring, but the instantaneous satisfaction of like having that person available 24/7.
That's a great point.
Right? That's going to be really powerful.
It always seems, Linda, I know you agree, tell me anybody else who has dealt with global teams or outsourcing, it always comes down to an issue with QA, quality control. Having a proper way to review the work is the frustrating part. And I think that's where AI can come into play with a lot of this also. So Blake,
and the time zone, like you just said, the
yeah,
time
that's true. Good
definitely
point.
a problem. I mean, depending on where your team is, makes it a challenge because, yay, great, the work's being done while I'm sleeping. But then if there's a problem during the day, guess who gets to tackle the problem? It has to be somebody that's in the US, and that makes it the hard part of it.
Do you feel that, so obviously artificial intelligence is not going anywhere, it's going to become a bigger part of this. When are the exams to become a CPA, to become an EA, going to start to involve the use of artificial intelligence and making sure that, I'm always afraid people are going to lean into it too heavy and make bad decisions because they're trying to take shortcuts.
Right.
That's where I'm going with this.
Well, it took the CPA exam until just a few years ago to incorporate Microsoft Excel into the exam. So I think we've got a few years.
Not in our lifetime then? Okay.
Yeah, it might. Well, I hope it's in my lifetime. Don't tell me it's less. I hope I got 20 years left in me. But yeah, it's going to take a while. But funny enough, like the people who benefit the most from AI and from these chatbots are the least experienced staff. The entry-level employees level up very quickly with AI tools. And that's why I think rolling this out is kind of slow in firms, is because they roll it out to the partners. And the partners are like, I know this stuff. Like the AI isn't doing a great job compared to me, but it's doing a really good job compared to that intern. So I tell firms, if you want to see a big improvement, give Perplexity to your junior staff. Let them ask the question in Perplexity first before they come to you. It's sort of like how in my firm, 15 years ago, I had a rule that was, if you have a question, you have to Google it first before you come to me. Because often the answer was right there. And same thing with Perplexity, or with, ChatGPT now that it's got web search enabled. There's a new feature now where on the desktop app, you can take screenshots really easy. And if you're using like an app and you don't know how to do something, you can just take a screenshot and say, how do I do this? And ChatGPT can figure out what you're using and where you're at and give you instructions on how to like get to the next, like it can be your guide. And it can do that for like tax software. I don't know how it does it.
Christy, you added a great comment on. Do you want to kind of speak to that real quick? And then after that, I think maybe it'd be a great idea to check out Perplexity, as you were saying. But Christy.
Yeah, definitely. I want to see Perplexity. Yeah, I mean, we definitely ran into this in the former firm that I worked in. We had a lot of interns, and what we noticed right off the bat is they don't know how to be resourceful. A lot of us just know these things that are, maybe older. I don't know if it's generational or they're just not learning it anymore. Or different, they were brought up differently than we were, but they just don't know, or they don't even think to try something, or go see what Google has to say. It kind of blew my mind at first. I thought they were being lazy. I was like, why? Just go look it up and see what happens. What did you try? So after a couple, 3 or 4 of our interns started doing that, I was like, oh, this is what's happening. So you almost have to teach them how to be resourceful now. And like doing it the way Blake's talking about, telling them, before you come to me, I will want you to tell me what you've tried, but I also want you to, at a minimum, Google it or go look in the SOPs or, go see what happened last month and see if you can figure it out on your own. They don't know to do that inherently anymore.
I think that's always been a problem, honestly, I can see it now. Things are so easy. Here, I'm starting to sound like I'm an old person, right? Things are so easy for the young generation, but like that also is a curse, right? Because like I had to go to the library. I had to look stuff up using a
Dewey Decimal System.
Not for very long, but I remember using the card.
Encyclopedia.
Yeah, I remember using the card catalog and the encyclopedia. So when Google came along, that was a huge boon.
But I think that's what today's people, that they rely on Google.
Yeah.
They rely on the internet and they rely on Google to tell them everything.
Right. But and I don't know if that's, what else? Why not? Right. Like, but what Christy is saying is that they don't even go look first. They just always ask. Like
you become the crutch. That's like in every business that happens. You become the crutch for the employees, that it's easier to just ask you than have to do the research yourself.
Or their level of anxiety with accidentally being wrong is so high that they would rather just go and ask you than to potentially be wrong, to potentially fail.
Yep.
Maybe that's 100%. It. Yeah. It's fear of failure is big.
I've talked with Linda a couple of times, and something, a lot of companies or a lot of firms, you're trying to always build the company culture. You're trying to make sure everybody feels like they're part of the team. And if you're doing team meetings, I've always said that one of the best ways to go about it is you have all the different team members. You say, okay, once a month, I want you to bring in an example of something you've learned, and you're going to teach it to the rest of the team. So obviously, depending on how many people you have, that size, you figure out the scheduling of it. But the point is you split it up to where it's just like one per meeting, And the goal is whatever it is that they learned, they come in, they teach it to others. And it's one of the best ways to get everybody interacting and feeling powerful about learning, along the way, I think. So
that can build confidence. I mean,
yeah,
for sure. We started doing it at Sarah and I in our firm, where we have each bookkeeper has their files, and when financial statement time, they produce the financial statements, then they record a recording for the client, because they're attorneys, they don't understand financial statements very well. It's not their language. And they just make a short recording. I tell them, highlight the good things, don't drag down, don't be Debbie Downer in it. And then they let us listen to it. And that gives us an opportunity to understand what they know, but also everybody gets excited if somebody does a great job. You can just kind of like highlight that in the team internally. And it's to build the confidence, because I mean, I can remember when I didn't really like the balance sheet, kind of scared me, and liability scared me. And I mean, it's payroll scared the crap out of me. I mean, those are things that are normal in the evolution of bookkeeping. And it's just a confidence booster. But I like the idea of telling them to go, I'm going to steal that, because I want them to go do the work. I tell my daughter that all the time. She's like, what's ChatGPT? And I'm like, you should know this. I should not be telling you what this is. But, and now she sends me, can I send this to my ex-husband a text and send it? I said, put it in chat and let it make it sound better. Tell it to be polite. And then, here's a few more prompts. But I'm wondering if you said in the beginning about the, like you said in the beginning about the younger interns doing a better job. Do you think that they just do a better job because they've been in it more, and because it's all about the prompts. I mean, if you don't put the right prompt in, you get different results over and over again. Do you think it's the prompts, they're doing a better job?
So here's how everything's going to change because of AI. It's not about knowing the answer anymore. It's about knowing how to ask the right question. So I'm really glad that I started out as a liberal arts major, because I spent years learning how to ask questions, which when I graduated seemed really useless, because the only thing that people wanted to pay me for was answers, and I did not have any. I only knew how to ask questions. But now it's working out really well. So if you don't even know how to ask the question, you can't use this tool. You have to see the situation and figure out what is the next question to get to an answer. And unfortunately, accounting education is all about teaching us answers so that we can recite them, and rules so we can memorize them. But you really don't need to memorize the rules anymore. You just need to know the concepts so that you can ask the right questions. And so that's how I'd like to see accounting education change, is like that we should actually be teaching people how to do research. I didn't learn any of that in my accounting courses. Nobody taught me how to do tax research or accounting research. There should be a whole semester on just how to research, how to teach yourself. Yeah.
Well, and how to do it practically, not from a theoretical or philosophical standpoint.
Right.
I know, like, theoretically, I know how to do a lot of things, but I want to, like, that's part of the reason why I learned so well from watching someone else. I need to see step 1, do this, step 2, do this, right? And then I can take that and apply it to other topics, right? But just that initial sort of like, let me know the actual steps.
I agree with it. I've said for some time now, I wish I could take all the student loans I still owe and give it to YouTube creators instead, because I've learned so much more through watching YouTube and my fellow accounting professionals than I ever learned from those college classes.
I like what Jane wrote, because it's so true.
Yeah.
You have a little kid. Why? It's exactly what you're doing when you start to finesse the questions, and you have to play with it, or you're not going to know how to use it. And it can be a little bit like a black hole. You could be in there going, all right, how about if I ask it this question? I mean, I had a whole political conversation with it one time.
If you've ever talked to Tanya recently, she has been arguing with ChatGPT.
How's that going for?
She's actually doing real well, but
knowing Tanya, she's winning.
Yeah.
But where she'll start with something, no, I want it to say this. No, I want it to say this. No, I want, and just like she's trying to break it.
Well, it can't spell, and it doesn't do math very well.
Well, and in Canada, it can never replace accounting because ours is too complex, and we have to go from source documents, of which ChatGPT cannot read effectively. So I'm not worried about my job being replaced in Canada, because we cannot go from the bank feed in cash code. So
again, this becomes a new tool that you can use to
Yeah.
strip away the mundane tasks. But as long as you are always staying on top of new technology, continuing education to learn how to use this stuff, now you get to focus the time on more like higher level conversations with the clients and provide more value. 100%, I think. So, Jane, you were saying AI won't replace jobs, but people who can use who can use AI efficiently will replace those who can't. I would agree. So Blake, how long do you want to show Perplexity real quick? I know it's kind of impromptu. Is it something?
Yeah, let's do it. Why not? Right?
Yep. It's all about learning
no-
more stuff.
No reward without risk, right? Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Reminds me of Appy
Okay.
Camp, but we won't go there with Heather and Liz and
No.
their
So this is the
demos
Earmark
and-
app, by the way. Shameless self-promotion. Look at all those courses. Isn't that amazing?
It's a lot.
But let's
didn't know
go
that.
over to Perplexity. Let's say I want to educate myself about something, right? Because I said that's my number one use case for AI. So let's say I want to educate myself about reasonable compensation for S Corp owners, right? Educate me about reasonable compensation for S Corp owners. I own an S Corp. I pay myself a salary, but I'm not sure how much I need to pay to avoid problems with the IRS. So now what Perplexity is doing is it's going out and searching the web. And the first thing it did was it's going to research reasonable compensation guidelines for S Corp owners to avoid IRS issues and then summarize the findings for me. And we can see the sources, right? It's got Forbes, RC reports, Block Advisors. It's got lots of sources here. What else? Bench, the Tax Advisor, Reddit. Now, some of these sources may not be sources we want to use. We could actually, in our prompts, say only go to certain sources if we wanted to do that, right? We could remove sources.
Oh, wow.
It's got the IRS here. So I could say like, well, I don't want Reddit. I don't want Collective. I don't want Bench. I don't want Block, but we'll leave in these other ones. Now it's going to redo its analysis, only using the sources I've selected. So it's giving me here now a summary, and it kind of gives me an outline. The key factors, the business factors, the common myths to avoid, right? The fixed ratio splitting is a myth. You're not supposed to do it that way, even though people do.
Interesting.
The consequences of inadequate compensation, what could happen? The IRS could reclassify the distributions as wages, best practices, what documentation do I need? What salary determination do I need, right? And then there's this is my favorite thing, the follow-up questions. It guesses what you might want to ask as a follow-up question. So this is helping because I don't need to know, right?
Yeah.
So like, here's a follow-up question. How does the 60/40 approach compare to other methods for calculating reasonable compensation? Anyone want to, which one do you think we should do, Matthew, with these follow-ups?
The 60/40, I would say.
So now, and I'm on Perplexity Pro, by the way, so I'm getting stuff you might not get if you use it for free. I would highly recommend upgrading to the Pro for $20 a month. So it's doing a few different searches and it's synthesizing. And now it's going to tell me about the 60/40 split method, which is where you pay 60% of earnings as salary and 40% as distributions. While simple to calculate, it can be problematic because it doesn't account for individual circumstances, may result in unreasonably high or low compensation, and fails to consider market rates for similar positions. And then it gives me the alternative methods.
So the goal there is, as you start diving into this, you now have a new area. You don't understand something or a term. You can then pop that in, go deeper. This is where some of the rabbit holes, of course, start. But it gets you that information that you would need.
Yeah. So for
Laura
instance,
was asking if there's a preference between Perplexity and CPA Pilot. I haven't used Perplexity, so I'd have to see from there. So I'm not familiar on that side. I know that CPA Pilot's very specific, where they've uploaded like the IRS tax code, all the pages and they
Mhm.
update it monthly. So from that side, that may be more specific to your need is what I would say in that scenario, in comparison to where Perplexity is going to be, it's open broader is what I'm seeing
Yes.
right away.
Perplexity is searching the web, and you can narrow the sources.
Yeah.
And you could in your prompt say only use IRS or tax law sources, but an AI that is specifically trained on a data set is always going to be more accurate if that's the only data set you want to consider. You can also upload documents into Perplexity and it will prefer those sources. So you can't do that with the tax code because it's so freaking large. But if you have like a particular like IRS document, you could just upload that PDF and use it. Which I did actually. I did a speaking session for the Society of Cost Segregation Professionals. And I took the IRS cost segregation guide and I created a custom GPT just trained on that guide. And so I could actually upload a cost seg report to it and ask it, hey, can you find any issues with this cost segregation study? And tell me what an IRS auditor would call out. So you can like practice the audit, find issues with the work you've done. Yeah. But I want to show you one example with the follow-up in Perplexity. So, here's the cool thing is it gives me some examples here, right? I could say like, okay, let's say, the owner pulls in, let's say they make, $100,000 per year. What's a typical, salary amount? And if it's smart, it'll say there is no typical salary amount it would take, right?
Okay.
But let's just see what other people do. Yeah, there's no one size fits all salary amount. Depends on these different factors, and it gives me the factors, right? The market-based approach.
Interesting.
Real world considerations.
So this leads into other options of helping your clients advisory, looking into this stuff. And if you're not a tax professional, at least giving them some guidance as to what questions to ask their appropriate tax professional.
Exactly. I mean, we could do this for bookkeeping stuff too, right? We could do this for all sorts of questions.
How are you supposed to code Perplexity for bookkeeping?
Yes. How should I code an expense for my Perplexity subscription in my books?
Interesting. See?
It gives me two ways to do it. It gives me the accrual method and it gives me the cash basis. Software and subscriptions.
Yep.
One thing that's kind of cool is I've done this before is if you give the AI like a journal entry you've done in the past and a payroll report.
Okay. Oh
gosh,
yes.
It can mimic it. It can do the next journal entry
iterations
with the new numbers. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Well, we're getting very close to right at the end here, and I always like to be respectful of time. Thank you for showing Perplexity. I now have a new tool to look at over the holiday break, which is wonderful. So that's good. Again, thank you, Blake, for coming on, talking to us a bit more about Earmark, the stuff that you're doing. And again, I really want to stress to make sure those who are not aware, besides going there to earn your CPEs, if you have content that you would like to be able to share and others could earn CPEs from it, you should be reaching out to Blake and David. They can help talk to you about the different options. I know a lot of different people that are working with them and have talked with them on it. So it's definitely worth checking it out.
I'll give you my email address. Shoot me an email at blake@earmark.me. Blake@earmark.me.
So Jane, any last words, last episode of the year this year, any final words?
No, none. I hope to see you all next year. I only get to say this 1 month a year, but I'll see you all next year.
Yes. So thank you everybody for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. And as always, here's wishing you all a very successful week.